Hey everyone, and welcome to another one of Analytica's customer chats. We're live, and today I'm delighted to be joined by Justin Levy, Director of Social and Influencer Marketing at Demandbase, previously at Citrix and ServiceNow. He's our guest today, and wonderfully honored and excited to be joined by my colleague, Ashley Zeckman, VP of Strategy for Analytica, who's recently joined the company. So fantastic to have you both talking about influencer marketing.
Thank you for having me.
I'm just happy to be here.
Yeah, amazing. So what I love about this is that you're in marketing, Justin, and we're talking about influencer marketing. And so I'd love to just kick off by asking you, what got you into influencer marketing? I imagine when you grew up as a young boy, you weren't dreaming about influencer marketing, as any kind of B2B professional. So would love to hear more about you and what got you into this industry.
Yeah, so about 12 years ago or so, 12, 13 years ago, Chris Brogan, for those that know him, and I launched a social media agency, one of the initial agencies kind of in the country. And when we launched that, we started to have brands, we worked with a lot of Fortune 500 brands or brands kind of in the Fortune 1000. And you kind of started to stumble into influencer marketing, right? It really wasn't what it is now with kind of very defined lanes and B2C, B2B, and things like that I know we want to talk about. But we started to work with brands that had requests to, reach out to and work with very different folks, right? What we would now call influencers. And so, one example was we were working with Sony, and they had, their new TV and their new Blu-ray and surround sound and ebook, like their Kindle competitor, and some things like that. And they really wanted to have people review them, kind of use them and review them. So they came to us, and we worked with them to define the individuals that would be most influential. Well, that was kind of interesting and easy, right? So who's the person that wants the biggest, newest, fun toy? It's usually the male of the household. So we went and looked at and found the top 5 to 8 most influential dads that we could find. One happened to be a good friend of mine, and he knew some people, but we built an experiential program. So it was things like Sony shipped the TV, the surround sound system, and the Blu-ray, and then we gave them gift cards to Blockbuster, which now that makes me date myself, but to go buy, popcorn and a movie and things of that nature, so that they could experience what the full, Sony TV with the surround sound and everything was like. And then, we hope that they created content around it and shared their thoughts on their blog and on Twitter and what have you. But then we took it a step further, and they met with the product teams so that they could provide the feedback directly to Sony on what they liked and didn't like about the products. We also had a camcorder and one of their point and shoot cameras at the time that was shipped to them. And so we had it done around Father's Day. So they used both devices to create content around Father's Day and what it meant to them. And one of my friends happened to create a video around the 3 generations of his family, his dad, his son, and him. And it was beautiful content that, I'm sure he still has, but it was done with the Sony devices. So that was one thing we had worked on. We also worked on with AMD. They wanted to do a pop-up at South by Southwest Interactive. And it was kind of on the fly because AMD is based in Austin. And they were a client that we were working with some other projects on. And it was a last minute ask of, can you get your different friends, be it to us, to like just do stuff with us. Like we'll come run over real quick with our camera or what have you, and we'll record something. And so we went and found, some of the bigger names that we had relationships with just to kind of bounce out and do something with. And I'd say one more example was Molson Coors that we were working with, and they were producing a spot around DUI. And so they really wanted to have a webinar and some additional pieces hooked onto that. So once again, we went out and worked with individuals that had broader reach within, Twitter and what have you, to come and share their experiences and just be part of that, like try to drive traffic and registrations to that so that Molson could get their viewpoint and their message out.
So, go ahead, Tim. Sorry.
Yeah, go for it, Ashley.
I was going to say, so much has changed since the Blockbuster days, right? And I know when we first met, Justin, I'd been reaching out to you as an influencer, right? And now you're in this influencer position, and I think it's just, again, even in digital years, that's like 100 years ago, right? And how do you think it's really evolved since you were doing things, with Sony, and to what you're doing now, and even as an influencer, kind of what you've learned along the journey?
I think over time we've started to see really the defined lanes, if you want to call them that, between B2C and B2B, right? So what we saw evolve over the past number of years, call it the past decade or what have you, is, there was that kind of term that came around of the mommy bloggers and things like that. And whether you believe in that or not, that's a separate conversation. But brands really saw that they had these influential sets of women who they could outreach to with their products. And usually it was something around home products, whether that was cookware or, various food products or, personal products or what have you. They would reach out to them. So mommy bloggers in a way got both a good name and a bad name, but that was really kind of B2C, right? And that was kind of who we worked with back then too, were kind of B2C. But at that time, it was just seen as influencers, as this whole this broad term. Now, I think we see B2B influencers separately. And so when you work with B2B influencers, they're not also B2C, or maybe there is a small subset that are, but typically they're kind of in their own lane of B2B influencer marketing.
Yeah, no, I think you're completely right, and what we see is that the B2B influencers are focused on thought leadership rather than specifically trying to sell products. But do you agree with that? Because what you were talking about with the experiential marketing with Sony, there are some B2B influencers that would unbox products and talk about whether they like them or not. Do you see that as the experiential marketing as a big part of the B2B play, or do you feel like it's much more thought leadership focused?
I do think it's thought leadership focused, but you can do, if you're creative, you can do unboxing type plays, right? Like there's nothing that stops a B2B brand like us or like anyone else from sending swag to, a box of swag to an influencer, and with the hope or the intent that they'll unbox it and record it and share it or wear it or, what have you, to drive more brand awareness. But I do think that the main part, 90% or whatever that number would be, is to drive thought leadership and participate with brands in thought leadership.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, if you are going to send something to be unboxed, right, it has to be part of a larger play. It can't just be about that one thing. Like everything really needs to be connected, right? And if it's, if you are sending something, make it something exciting, make it something fun. Like maybe it's a pie and not a new, piece of hardware, right? Just something that really kind of helps connect with the overall theme of your program and gets people excited to participate as influencers and then watch as audience members, right? Just to see how it all unfolds.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think that somewhat when it's done really excellently, you can do something that's a general unboxing, right? Okay, here's the box of swag or whatever from us. And that includes a hoodie and this, that, whatever, the variety of things, but that can be table stakes. And, when you want to go to the next level with your influencer, say if that was your introduction to them, almost, the first time you're working with them or you're building a longer term relationship with them, you can take it steps further down the road as you learn more about them and you develop that relationship. So maybe, and Ashley, you and I have talked about this before, maybe it's around their birthday, or maybe it's around something that's non-brand related, but the brand pays for. So, nowadays, because everyone's, work from home for the most part, we've seen many brands just amongst their employee set do that things that were like experiences, like wine, like happy hours over Zoom, or, cooking experiences. We did one as our holiday party, for example. There's no reason why you couldn't do that with your influencers. Just pay for it as a brand, but it's not anything that's like, here, wear our stuff. So I think that there's opportunities there. And then as you learn, like I said, more about the influencers, maybe you learn that someone enjoys running. So a mutual friend that we have and that you used to work for, Lee Odin, he is crazy and likes to run in the snow in Minneapolis. But once you know that about him, maybe you can send him socks, wool socks, for example, or things that are to what he likes to do, if you know that. But maybe, someone else enjoys the beach or what have you, so you can appeal to that. So I think that there are the typical brand things that you can do, but ways that you can make it personalized down the road with those influencers.
Yeah, I love what you're saying there. And obviously it's about personalizing the experience and getting that human connection. And what I've observed with the industry is that you have influencer marketing in your job title, which is amazing. And we love that. Actually, not many people compared to the broader people in marketing have influence marketing in their job titles. So what I've observed is that people whose full-time role is to do influence marketing have the time to create these personal experiences. And the people that really want to do influence marketing, but it's like 5% of their role, they just can't compete with those personal experiences. But I think your point is amazing. And I think it's just we're just going to see more evolution into those personal experiences, the more impact that you see the influencers are making. So I just wanted to add that because I think you're right. I think not many people can actually have the headspace to be able to do that. One question that I really want to ask you was, you've worked for Citrix and ServiceNow and now Demandbase. How have influencers been perceived internally, and how has that changed over the years? Obviously, influence is an ambiguous term. What did senior management think of the word influencers? How did the different organization view them, from in the last kind of 7 or 8 years?
Yeah, and it's a good question. I think initially, because I know this has evolved at several companies, but initially, from what I saw at those companies and at others, is that quote unquote influencers have been seen as media or analysts, right? Because, and it's no surprise, and it's nothing wrong with that, because analysts and media are the ones that you are trying to influence, whether it's to cover your brand when you have launches, or when you want to put your senior management up for an interview, or things of that nature. Analysts you want them to cover your brand in a positive way. So it's no surprise that every brand might consider them influencers. Back when I was at Citrix, things have evolved there now. When I was at Citrix, they considered one of their programs that I know still in play now was something called their CTP program, which is their technology professionals program. And what it is it's a small group of people that they actually have to apply to the program. There's a whole kind of way that group is chosen. It's a very small group yearly. And they were run by or managed by a separate person in a separate team in the company. And really what that was an opportunity to have private time with some of the senior executives, have, access to, say, betas of product before it went live, and to provide feedback directly to the teams, and a whole host of other things. I'm not doing it by any means justice because, I wasn't directly involved with the program, but, I think that was some of the initial forays into quote unquote influencer marketing there. I know that has, like I said, evolved for them now. And I think that, at ServiceNow, I didn't have a big touch on that simply because the team there, when I was at ServiceNow, things have changed there as well, but it was broken up into two different pillars. So there was a marketing team that was overseen by the CMO, and then the comms and design and some other teams that were broken up under the CCO, so the Chief Communications Officer. So they really stood apart. The CMO group was there to try to drive demand, whether it was for the big event or, regular type demand. And obviously on the CCO side, it was around communications and acquisitions and, all the brand design assets and things of that nature. So on my side, I was on the marketing side. So I was part of the demand generation, side of the responsibilities, whereas the other social team was really around that kind of driving the story of the brand. So both have evolved, but because now at ServiceNow, it is one combined team, as some changes have been made there. But I think generally in the industry, we've seen this evolve, even when press and analysts are still considered kind of influencers. And I don't see that changing because it shouldn't change.
And that's the same at Demandbase. How do you now view? I mean, how does senior management view influence? Is it just integrated as just a key ingredient in terms of your marketing, or is there still an educational conversation with senior management?
No, it's integrated across our team. So I work on, and our team works on some broader initiatives. Things that we're really working on, but we have goals that roll all the way up to and through senior management with the way that our goal system is set up. And but we also support other teams when something is coming up that they want support on. It might be in a different form or fashion, a smaller subset or something much larger. But we do support other teams throughout the organization, but we do have support to do other initiatives that we want to do.
Great.
I love that. It's like, yep, which things are integrated and which things are standalone, right? Because there's room for both.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So Justin, I want to play a rapid fire round with you. I hope you're ready. So when the three of us started in influencer marketing, there wasn't a playbook. Right. And in some ways we're all still working on building it together. Right. So since you've been, doing this for so long and have been an influencer yourself, what do you think are some of the major successes to date? And then some of the major challenges, like just that you've noticed over the past few years that you've experienced?
Yeah, I think some of the major successes is this will definitively continue this year and beyond is starting to build long-term relationships and not just seeing them as transactional, right? So not just paying influencers, building a long-term two-way relationship. Some of the challenges is that people to break into the market are paying influencers. So I think that, I know that your team came out with the first compensation report. And I think, one of the issues right now, and I don't see this changing, is that influencers all charge things differently. They charge for their use of their platforms, their thought leadership, what have you, differently. So for brands to not understand the metrics that they want to measure, that can wildly throw off how much you're going to spend, because X influencer is charging, a certain amount for access to their followers and for their thought leadership, and it could be completely different for someone else.
Right. And that's where we've seen a lot of success is that hybrid model, right? Like, what are the things that you pay for? What are the things that are organic as part of building that long-term relationship? And Tyler in the comments mentioned it made him think of the 5 love languages, right? So it's almost like knowing what your influencers' love language is. Is it money? Is it exposure? Like, what are the things that make them tick and make them want to collaborate together, right? Also, Brito did comment that he loves your quarter zip and that you're looking pretty fly today. I just wanted to make sure that you know.
Yeah, hey Brito, hey Tyler. Please do keep on commenting if you're watching. I'd love to pose some difficult questions for Justin. He's ready to take them. So I guess this brings us on to measurement, and because the industry is evolving at a rapid pace. I guess I've got 2 questions. First of all, what is your sort of view on how your expectation of the influencer has evolved over the past few years, and then how do you measure success at Demandbase?
Sure. I think that expectation of the influencer is done on the whether they're paid or not. If they're paid, it's just stipulated in their contract that they are doing X for X payment. It's kind of simple in that way now, because influencers are used to contracts, whether it's on their paper or the brands. But with someone organically, you can't force them, right? You can have the long-term or new relationship with them. You can arm them with as much content and exposure as you hope to do, and follow up and what have you. But at the end of the day, you can only hope and incentivize them if you have ways or things of that nature. I think on the measurement side, there are a few different ways. Everyone is going to want to measure reach. I don't measure impressions because I do not agree with that measurement for anything related to social or influencer marketing. It's, for me, a BS metric. But reach, certainly, because that's what you're doing. You're working with influencers to get to their audience, right? Engagement, certainly, you want to know, what is the engagement? And I think that breaks out between the brand engagement and the influencers, the engagement on the influencer's channel, because channels or blog, whatever that may be. Because on the brand side, your hope is that they're driving some traffic back to whatever channels you've provided them. On their side, you hope that they're driving engagement on their channels. And then ultimately, you should be driving traffic back to whatever your landing page is, whatever that was about. So if you had a product launch, I'm sure you have a product landing page that you're trying to drive people to. If it's around a webinar, trying to drive, leads or things like that. Of course, if it's on the demand side, there's a whole nother subset of metrics that come into play through the funnel. But on the paid side, you're probably looking at all those metrics as well. But another one that pops up is cost per engagement, because you want to look at one way that you can level set all of those varying costs of what different influencers are going to charge is how much did it pay per engagement, because that is where you may decide to work with that influencer again or negotiate new pricing or things like that, because you could find that you did pay a lot, but they drove a lot of engagement for you, or you could see that you paid a lot, they drove next to nothing for you. So it's not worth, paying them next time.
And that's where tracking is just so important. I think even 5-6 years ago, we weren't always using tracked links for everything,
Yep.
right? And now we're able to see, which influencers are, yes, engaging on their own, engaging their audience on their own channels, but which influencers are driving the most traffic back to that landing page, which ones are driving the most conversions, and understanding, how to work with different influencers, like what, which are the ones that, again, drive engagement versus leads versus whatever it might be, and kind of starting to map that all out too.
Yeah. And I would say the other metric that I realized that I forgot is that in one that we measure is share of voice with our influencers as compared to our competitor set. So if you're in B2B and you're in a certain, area of B2B, naturally you have your competitors, you're probably sharing some subset of influencers because they're reaching out and they're working with some of those same influencers. So you have your broader share of voice that is generally measured through social or other channels. But what is your share of voice with those influencers that you're working with against your competitor set?
Yeah, no, I think the brand share voice metric is obviously a very typical metric of how a lot of B2B brands work. I love your point about the cost per engagement as a level set metric to basically measure the value across different sets of influencers. I think too often, like you said, people get influenced by how the influencers charge their services, and they're all different. So you really need one metric that you care about to be able to do that. Otherwise, you just don't know how much to pay or whether it's organic. So I love the fact that you said that. I've got a burning question. Since you're in ABM and account-based experience, I would love to ask you and put you on the spot. What is the best practice influence marketing program that drives ABM success? I know that's a big challenge for a lot of tech brands. I'd love to hear your thoughts on how to connect those two programs, which are quite often siloed in larger organizations.
Yeah. So, I would say, well, first of all, we are up leveling beyond ABM to a broader kind of go-to-market suite. So demand base is kind of moving beyond just ABM. But when it comes to account-based marketing, you want to, so for those that don't know what ABM is, it's to provide people, prospects with the right content at the right time to your target accounts. So when you work with influencers, you hopefully want to try to deliver some of that content right at that time in as much as you can. I do think, and it was something that you mentioned, Tim, on a recent podcast that you're on Social Pros about working with some of your top accounts to also help the delivery of content, because the thing that is helpful is when you look at metrics, and there's 1,000 of them, every one of them proves that there is too much content right now, especially with the pandemic. So too many people are being barraged with too much content. Content is a good thing. Too much of it is a bad thing. So with your influencers and with influencer programs, you can try to arm them with the right content to deliver to their audiences at varying stages. So hopefully, if done correctly, this one piece of content that you care about, they are actually reaching their audiences, which have some of your prospects in it at the right time. So you're not sending out a top of funnel piece of content that's really, you're trying to target, say, middle or bottom of funnel, and your influencers are top of funnel only, right? Hopefully you're aligning your influencers with the right content.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And so if the influencers are posting content, generating content where your prospect is part of their audience, that has a direct influence, of course. Do you also think that the influencer content needs to be repurposed and shared through the subject matter experts or the salespeople on the front line, or like, what are your thoughts around that?
I 100% agree. So I'll give an example with one of the things that we do at Demandbase. So we have a platform called DBTV. It was the first streaming B2B platform in the industry that we launched earlier in 2021. And we have 3 thought leadership shows on there. And one of my responsibilities is that, and part of the influencer program, depending on what campaign we're working on, is to offer this as a benefit of co-created content to an influencer, right? So one of our shows might be an offer. Do you want to come sit down with our VP of content, who I report to, for an interview? We'll take that interview, we'll produce it with our video editors, and we'll publish it on DBTV. We take that, obviously, on the other side, on the other part of my responsibilities, we share it on social, we tag them, they repurpose it, share it on their channels, everything you would hope through social that they're doing to build that relationship. But a lot of times what we've had happen with sales is either they're using that video within, their sales calls, or they've reached out to us and asked us for introductions because they're trying to get into those accounts. So we've already developed a relationship with that company or with that influencer, and now they're trying to figure out who within the company is the right person to talk to. So we've already had this developed relationship that we can go back to and ask who's the right VP or someone for them to talk to. So I think it goes both ways, in that they can get pieces of content to share, but they also can come back to us to ask for introductions and additional content.
Amazing. Thank you.
So I know Tim got to ask 2 burning questions, so I want to ask one now. It's my turn, I think.
Exactly. I'll shut up for 10 minutes.
No, I'm teasing. So if you had to give one piece of advice to people thinking about starting an influencer program, like one thing you wish you would have known, or one thing that you found really successful, what would be that 1 or 2 things that you really want people to kind of walk away with knowing as they're exploring this?
Yeah, I think that, and it's my deep belief, I, mentioned it earlier, that you do need, and it takes a lot of work. It is not simple, but you need to focus on long-term relationship development. It is easy to pay people, and some of it you do have to, and it's only right by those influencers, right? They have large audiences. Part of what they do is speak and write and do and work with other companies. So it's right to to offer them funds to do things, but you really need to work with influencers on developing long-term 2-way relationship. So that's not it's not transactional. You can do that. That can be one part of your program, but it's also not just one way. So with your organic influencers or those that you're not paying, you can't just burn social capital all the time to, hey, you shared this last time. Can you go share this for us now? You have to be willing to also share their content or comment on it, or have other people within your organization who have the specialty or the subject matter expertise go comment on their stuff. So, for example, I might not be the right person to comment on an influencer in sales piece of content or market and ops, because I don't work in market and ops, but we have a few amazing people that do. So I sometimes will go on into one of our influencers' LinkedIn posts and tag them, and and then they can choose to jump into the conversation or not. But I do believe that there is a place for paid relationships. You do need them, but you need to focus on two-way long-term relationship development.
If I was in the comments right now on LinkedIn, I'd be celebrating that answer. I love it. Because that's the thing that's just missed so often, is building that foundation and those long-term relationships, and expecting to get to Z when you haven't, you can't go from A to Z, right? You have to take some incremental steps along the way. I love that. I'm going to quote you on that somewhere, because I think that was phenomenal.
I can see that what we're wearing has caused a lot of debate, because Meg from Splunk said it's a very lovely seafoam green. So hi Meg, I hope you're still watching. And Ashley and I teamed up with Blue Jumpers, which was a complete coincidence, but we want to do that to show solidarity for us. There's also someone that's appeared as a LinkedIn user for me. It hasn't got their name, but saying, what are your thoughts on the audience's share of voice? An influencer shares encouraging content about a brand, but how does the audience react and respond? Are they feeling positive or negative towards the brand, product, etc.? And what topics or phrases are popular within the audience towards the message or brand as a whole?
So one, I actually do think that this is called Seafoam Green from the brand that I got it. Yeah. So I actually think she's right, without looking at the tag that I know, or going to the website. But can you that was a long.
There's a lot. Yeah, so it was a very loaded question.
That a bit?
It's talking about the audience's share of voice. So an influencer shares encouraging content about a brand, but how does the audience react and respond? So do you measure the audience's share of voice? I guess what they're saying is beyond the influence community.
Yeah, I mean, that would be extremely hard, right? So if I'm understanding it correctly, please correct me if I'm wrong. The influencer shares something on our behalf. What is the share voice of the engagement from their audience that reacts to it? That is essentially going 2 degrees of share voice out, and that becomes hard. However, I do think you can link them. So one, you are measuring, if you take it as a metric, you are measuring engagement. So one, you are getting that. That reach of the influencers X, that in the engagement on their post or post is Y. But if you're also monitoring the share voice of your influencers versus your competitor set, or even if you just monitor solely your share voice with your influencers, you will see that go up if they're driving a lot of engagement, right? Because if you had influencers that were sharing, your share of voice might be decent, but if they're driving a lot of engagement around your brand message, that's going to be much higher, because there's a higher share of voice.
Exactly. No, I think that's a very good answer. It's a very tough question. I know that you can look at share of engagement from influencers, but ultimately, you can look at audiences, but it's sometimes hard to define. Through wider social listening, you can find out whether CMOs or people in marketing or people in technology talk more about one brand than other. And I think that connecting the dots is very smart. But quite often people use influencer communities, I think, as a proxy metric and the engagement for the wider audience. It's a really tough question, of course. Ashley, I didn't mean to hog any more questions. So do you have any more questions for Justin?
So no, you did not hog the questions. I got to ask everything I wanted to.
So Justin, looking out into the future, what do you see anything that's going to pop up in 2022? Are you going to be doing TikTok videos with your sales guys or girls, like with influencers? Are you going to use social audio? Like any other sort of trends that you see coming into 2022 for influencer marketing?
Well, apparently anything that I do, I have to wear the variety of different colors that I have in my closet of quarter zips. But no, I think that, of course we have certain things in the works that have to stay hidden. But for right now, I think that we'll see as an industry, it'll be interesting to see where social audio continues to go, because LinkedIn has just introduced their kind of audio events bit. So we have to see kind of how that works and how that might integrate with influencer campaigns. It's something that I don't know anyone's thought of yet. We haven't, and I don't foresee us getting involved with things like Clubhouse or Twitter Spaces. It's just not relevant to our brand right now. Not saying that won't change, but we've started to dabble in TikTok. So, and we've started to talk about how we could integrate influencers at some point. The first step with that would be to create content that then you work with influencers that are influential within TikTok to share out that content, right? And if you work within TikTok, if you're creating content, especially if you're on the B2B side, you have to make sure that content is not the same content that you're posting on your other channels, right? You want it to be fun and you want it to be relevant to that network and to what that audience is like. And then you'll have a higher likelihood of being able to work with influencers that are, say, pertinent to TikTok. But I do think that as we grow our program, continue to grow our program, and if you look at how the landscape is changing, you have started to see really develop subset of influencers on, say, LinkedIn, especially within B2B. So we've always had the kind of influencers on Twitter, kind of across the board, B2B and B2C, but there has become this very developed subset of folks that are influential and can drive traffic in engagement, that are really positioned all of their kind of time and content into LinkedIn. So especially at senior levels, at, say, the director and above, or VP and above levels within a company. So I think we do a lot within there, and then we'll probably continue to do that. But I think that TikTok isn't going anywhere, and you're starting to see more B2B brands get involved or already be involved. It's just dependent on the ones that will succeed, and hopefully we're one of them, are the ones that create content that's pertinent to that network. And to do that, you have to have people that understand that network on your team.
Yeah, absolutely, and I'm sure you will be one of the brands that will succeed. And I know we're out of time. The time flies by as ever. But what I love about this interview is that from, I think you said 12 or 13 years ago, that it started out through delivering wonderful experiences for the influencers and those long-term relationships, and you've obviously carried that through over the past 12 or 13 years and stayed true to that. And I think, as we all know, it's based upon relationships, and that's why you've been successful in the industry. So thank you so much for coming on Analytica's Customer Chats. And if anyone's watching wants to see more customer chats, then just go to the Analytica resources page and you'll find other interviews that we've done with other customer of ours. So thank you so much for joining, and thank you, Ashley, for joining with me. So it's not just me from the Analytica side.
Thank you, Tim and Ashley. It's been a pleasure, as always.
And thank you, everyone, for watching.
Take care.